Greetings, everyone. I'm Mar. Once again, this is my opinion. High school is one of those times in one's life that can be a living hell. It's going to depend on where you fall in the hierarchy. Me, I was kind of in the nerd zone, hanging out with Jeff and everyone, but I was also a little bit off to the side since I was in JROTC, and of course, being a 6'4" wrestler, nobody freaking messed with me. Well, at least to my face, probably. If anybody made fun of me behind my back, I'm not going to know, and I didn't care. This episode does deal a little bit with that, but more retroactively looking back on it, and also talking to your spouse about your different experiences. Because, as Ray puts it later in this episode, this is a mixed marriage. This, of course, is high school, and it deals with Ray's 20th high school reunion, which I have no personal frame of reference for how it feels to attend a reunion, because my class, we did not do a 10th year anniversary one, and our 20th does not come up for almost another decade. I might revisit this thought when that occurs, if we do have one. Now, Ray, being the slightly homebody naysayer that he is when it comes to events like this, did not want to go. In fact, he didn't want to go to the point where he didn't even bring it up with Debra, because he knows the moment that the phrase high school anniversary this Saturday left his mouth, Debra would be like, oh, we're going. So when Robert drops it, when he stops over for cookies, Ray's on the inside going, ah, crap. Thanks, Robert. And he tries to tell Debra, I don't want to go. She's all excited, wanting to go. And we know that she really loves events from previous episodes, but this is the first time where they really show, at least from a school perspective, where she was in the line. We've known from other episodes, like the one involving her parents and other little bits and pieces here and there, that when she was younger, Debra was probably one of the popular kids and went to a good school. Here, it really does show that she definitely was towards the top of that pecking order I mentioned. And as I've said, the phrase that Ray uses, a mixed marriage, is apt. Of course, they met after high school and all that. Well, Ray is eventually dragged to the reunion due to Debra going to his vanity. Oh, you still got your hair? You still got everything? And when he gets there, a lot of the people still look pretty good. So Ray's taken down a little bit. But he perks up when he meets his old high school buddies. Warren, played by Brian Posehn, and Scott, played by future criminal attorney from Breaking Bad, Bob Odenkirk. Which, watching this, I wasn't really actively thinking it, but as I was speaking, in the back of my head I was subtly thinking, his voice sounds familiar outside of this episode, why is that? And now looking at the credits, I'm like, oh, it's Bob. This is an earlier role for him. He actually did a pretty good job as Scott, because he had some of the funnier overreactions in this little trio. And once they get together, it's like a day hasn't passed since they last saw each other. Some of the dialogue does hint that they have been in communication with each other since high school graduation, but how often they've hung out, probably not too much. Probably like a pass on the street, like, hey, how's it going? But nothing big hang out, at least the three of them. As we find out later, Warren and Scott still do hang out a lot, and they actually try to open up a business in later seasons. So nice to see them reminiscing, bringing everything up. Debra does try to be polite with them and talk with it, but you can tell it's the fake nice, and Patricia Heaton does a good job bringing it across. It's obvious to the audience. It's kind of hard to tell if Ray and his buddies actually full on notice it, or if they're too immersed in their nostalgic reunion to notice that Debra's putting on an act. And the reason I recognize this, because in my job as a security officer, to get into character, we do have to put on this when we're discussing stuff with guests, more so the more trivial stuff. And I try to make it seem like I'm not putting on the act. So it's one of those things that you can kind of really spot. It's also one of the things from my own personal experiences how I could usually see through certain things, but not everything. But I'm getting a little bit too sidetracked with that. Part of me wonders why Debra is reacting like this. Did she not know this is how Ray was when he was younger? Has he not told her too many stories? As far as we know, the only high school story that's really come up as a major plot point was how he lost his virginity in the car. Did she assume from stuff like that he was probably higher up, more towards the popular kids? And also, as a little continuity aside, it makes you wonder how those two things reconcile. Was that a more nerdy girl that in the second memory was a bit older, so she wasn't as posh? Is that actually how she was because it's from Ray's reminiscence and the other one was from Debra's thought reminiscence? It's one of those weird little things that is kind of hard to reconcile between the two episodes, but there's nothing outrageously bad enough that I would call that a plot hole or a major inconsistency, but it is something to ponder on. But even if Debra had not been told about how Ray was during high school outside of a few stories, she's seen how he's like. She knows her husband from the almost decade they've been together. It's 10 years the next season, a couple seasons from this. So it's like, why are you acting like this? Why are you surprised? Is it because of how in it he is with his old buddies that you now see how he was when he was younger, and you're thinking, probably if we had met then, I probably wouldn't have dated him then, or other things, but or maybe it's just a surprise to see him getting this into something that he didn't want to go to originally because he's with his group. Then, of course, she goes off, goes to the bathroom, and comes back with the popular girl that they were talking about while she was gone, Jessica Bell. More her style. They go to the popular kids' table, and Debra starts to have an excellent time with all of them because this is more her speed. And then Ray's just sitting at the table doing purse watch duty, and from what we could tell, the rest of his night he's just sitting there. I'm surprised he doesn't go and hang out with his buddies again. That's what I probably would have done. And as we see when he gets back, Debra had an excellent time where Ray's like, and as he puts it, when they get into a little bit of an argument after this, where do you want to be? On our couch at home. Just shows how much of a homebody Ray is, which I can understand a little bit. I'm kind of a homebody at times, but I still like going out and hanging out. You know, more so now with the whole quarantine thing where it's a forced thing, and after a while you're like, I hate this place so much. I can't get out. I can't get out. But that aside, my reunion, I would still go just to see. That's what happened to that person. Oh, I recognize that person. It's like, oh, yeah. Oh, you changed a lot. Now, some of my old high school compatriots, whether they're from my same graduating year or not, I still do keep up with them. A couple of them I talk to occasionally. Of course, Jeff was a year behind me, but obviously I still keep up with him. A couple others. He's the one I keep up with the most, though, so I can definitely say whoever I end up with, like if I end up a Ray to someone's Debra, they're not going to be that shocked, other than maybe seeing how heavy I was, because some of the people I have dated recently, I have shown them what I look like at my heaviest, and they were like, damn! Which is, like, true. I mean, even getting back some weight with quarantine, I can still wear a 1X shirt, whereas at my heaviest, I was up to a 3X being super tight, but getting a little bit more off topic there. It's not going to be as much as a surprise, I guess. And as you can expect from an episode around this, Ray and Debra do get into a little bit of a squabble involving Debra having so much fun with the popular kids, Ray not enjoying himself, them talking about high school and all that. This is the part where it's like, okay, this is where it's becoming a little formulaic, but you can kind of understand where the argument's coming from. It's from their whole clash of wanting to go out, not wanting to go out, high school coming up a little bit with it, Debra teasing him a little bit. Some of it isn't good fun, and Ray is a little sensitive about it, but considering that a couple of those guys used to bully him when he was in high school, you can kind of understand it, even if it's been 20 years. Some stuff like that, you're like, no, that's not fun. But the stuff that's mentioned is minor compared to some stuff that could have happened. Like, the most aggressive thing that's brought up that those kids did to him was push him into the girls' room. That's minor compared to other stuff. They could have given him swirlies, they could have pulled his pants down, which... that's the worst thing someone ever tried with me, but that was middle school, not high school. And the person, I will say as an aside, is lucky I'm not a super violent person. Because if it was any other big person, they probably would have turned around and popped the guy in the face. But me, not my style. Heck, there could have been slander and stuff involved with Ray's name, but nope. I think part of that might also be that for freshman year, his older brother was there, and considering that it mentions that Robert pushed the kid into the girls' room, which might explain why they eventually did it to Ray as retaliation later on. But it's one of those things, I guess, if you mess too much with Ray, big guy Robert's going to kick somebody's butt. And as we see in a later episode, I think in season 6? Yeah, season 6. When someone messes with Ray, Robert does come to his defense. Even though earlier in that episode he didn't look like he would, but he does. So I would assume Robert did come to Ray's defense quite often when they were in high school, even though the year thing set up for this is going to create a plot hole in a later episode, depending on how you look at the school system. But I'll save that discussion for when we get to that episode. And 2 seasons, if I remember my count right. Of course, Robert does join in on some of the teasing with Debra at one point, and he does bring out his real voice. We get to, it's a little bit of it done in a mock way, but we get to hear Brad Garrett's more normal sounding, very jazzy voice. But like I said, it's slightly adjusted for mock purposes. But it's nice to see him break out anything other than his typical low voice, but it's done in jest. Of course, Ray and Debra do make up before the end of the episode, and they do have off-screen. But the dialogue leading up to it, I like how it starts all general, then it goes into slight high school stuff, which is a little chuckle-worthy. And then, of course, the episode does end on a good note where, even though Ray does not like dancing, it's one of the few times we do see he really does get into it. It's not my favorite one. My favorite one is still the Hey Sister, which I'll mention in that episode when it comes up. But him and Robert down in the basement dancing to Funky Town, which, if there's any use of a popular culture song in any of these episodes I love, besides the fact that they use Jungle Love as an opening theme, it would be the use of Funky Town here. And I just love that song. Like, whenever we still had bar night at work, whenever that song would come out, it'd be one of those things like, yeah, just hoping nothing breaks out. It's one of those things like listening to the music and mentally getting into the groove. It was a nice one. And to see them bonding over dancing at the end of it is nice, especially when Robert's impressed by something Ray does. Like, where'd you learn that? Church dance. So it ends on a pretty good high note. Lou Schneider wrote this episode, one of the 29 episodes that Lou wrote. And just looking at the list, it's interesting I compared it to the flashback in the car from season 1 because he wrote that episode too. Kind of nice to they had a little bit of continuity. This is one of the few he wrote for this season. He also wrote T-Ball, which is one of the episodes I usually skip when I'm doing a marathon, mainly because I'm not a big fan of the plot. And I really do hate the dad character in that one, which I'll get to that when I get to T-Ball and start talking about that character. I hate him in his later appearance more, but I really do kind of hate him in that one too. Played by Homer Simpson's voice actor, funny enough. I didn't know that until doing some research for the beginning of this series. He also wrote Sitter, which is another one I skip. But he also wrote one of my favorite episodes of this season, Garage Sale. He wrote some other great ones, so he's one of the better Everybody Loves Raymond writers. Obviously, he wrote almost 30 episodes of the whole show, so they retained Lou for almost the entire run, and then Lou wrote the finale, so doing something right. He also was a producer on the show, so that does help a little bit. Does have the characters and their interactions down. All the actors do a good job. It's a Ray and Debra-centric episode, so we're mostly going to see them. The other ones only pop in and out when the humor requires it. Peter Boyle and Doris Roberts are the ones with the least amount of screen time. Peter less so because he's only in the beginning for one very frank induced moment. Whereas Marie, it's just doing her typical stuff, accidentally baking too many cookies, and then showing up at the right moment to get a good gag in about her buying him some shorts, which is one of those things like, which I really do feel for Ray there. I hate it when people buy clothes for me if it's ones I would not wear. Now, ones I would wear, I don't mind. Like, as an example, they're not folded, but these gym pants that I got for Christmas last year, this is good. If it's something like that, or like a gym shirt, or something like this type of shirt, that'll take. Or something for something I like Naruto or some of the other stuff I watch, or Game of Thrones, stuff like that. Shirts that I know I will wear, or the person that gets them knows I will wear. It's a stuff like, really? You got me these type of shorts? This is not my style. I can't get jiggy with this, as a certain character from a movie would say. But probably change it to in this. All in all, High School is a pretty fun episode. Performances are all around are pretty good. Even though the main dilemma, you're like, really? You're getting all out of shape for that? I mean, it's more teasing. But you can kind of understand it from the fact that Ray is a homebody, and it is probably bringing up some bad memories that he does not want to talk about, because there could be memories that he hasn't even mentioned that the show is just using as under subtext that he doesn't want to talk about. But it's one of those ones like, little brief and then makeup, so not another day in the life of the Barone family. The next episode can also be considered a day in the life of the Barone family, but I think it's something that the main argument, a lot more understandable why this blow up happens, and it's one of those ones that is a long time coming, and I'm glad it actually happens this early in the show's run, because if they did this premise of Debra writing Marie a letter later in the show's run, it'd be one of those things like, really, Debra, you waited that long? Even though you can make the argument, which I will say for the next episode, that she should have done this earlier.